Hi, young lady. What is your name?
Grace.
Grace. You're a beautiful young lady, you know that?
Thank you, I guess.
How old are you?
12.
Are you excited to be here?
It's crazy.
When a shy mobile phone salesman from Wales walked onto the Britain's Got Talent stage in 2007, nobody in that theater could have imagined they were witnessing history in the making. His audition video would become one of the most watched moments in YouTube history with nearly 200 million views, and his victory would launch a global phenomenon that's still going strong 18 years later. But what the cameras didn't show was the brutal bullying that nearly silenced his voice forever. The devastating bicycle accident that left him broken and bankrupt, or the fact that he almost didn't audition at all. In 2025, Paul Potts is still defying the critics who said his voice wouldn't last a year, and his story proves that sometimes the most extraordinary dreams come true for the most ordinary people. Paul Potts possessed an undeniable force that nobody expected from a man who sold mobile phones for a living. Standing awkwardly on that stage in his ill-fitting suit, nervous and self-deprecating, he looked nothing like a star. Yet when he opened his mouth and unleashed the soaring notes of Nessun Dorma, the aria made famous by the legendary Pavarotti, he transformed into something magnificent. This wasn't a polished performer from a prestigious music academy. This was a 36-year-old man from Port Talbot, who had faced rejection, illness, injury, and financial ruin, who had been told his entire life that opera wasn't for people like him. He battled crippling self-doubt, born from years of childhood bullying, endured painful health crises that nearly ended his singing before it began, and survived a bicycle accident that left him physically broken and drowning in debt. Yet through it all, his voice remained his sanctuary, his weapon, his salvation. Join us as we tell you what really happened to Paul Potts from Britain's Got Talent. The Wales Millennium Centre in Cardiff feels impossibly grand when you're a mobile phone salesman who hasn't sung opera in years. Paul Potts walks onto the Britain's Got Talent stage on March 17, 2007, looking every bit the ordinary man he claims to be. His suit doesn't quite fit right. His posture screams discomfort. When hosts Ant and Dec ask him questions, his answers are humble to the point of self-deprecation. He tells the judges he's 36 years old and works at Carphone Warehouse. The camera cuts to Judge Simon Cowell, whose expression already suggests mild skepticism. Piers Morgan and Amanda Holden exchange glances that seem to say they've seen this type before, the amateur who thinks they can sing. Paul explains that he'll be performing opera, specifically Nessun Dorma, one of the most challenging and recognizable areas in the classical repertoire. It's the song Luciano Pavarotti made immortal, a piece that demands not just technical skill but soul-stirring emotion. The audacity of attempting it seems almost comical coming from this unassuming man in the awkward suit. Simon Cowell's face registers what might be a groan. The audience sits in polite anticipation, perhaps already preparing sympathetic applause for what they assume will be an earnest but ultimately forgettable attempt. Then the music begins, and Paul Potts opens his mouth. The first notes erupt from him with such power, such purity, such unexpected magnificence that the entire theater seems to gasp as one. This cannot be the same person who stood there seconds ago looking so ordinary, so unimpressive. His tenor voice soars through Puccini's masterpiece with breathtaking control and emotion. He hits the high notes with pristine clarity, his vibrato perfect, his phrasing exquisite. The audience's expressions shift from polite interest to absolute astonishment. Amanda Holden's hand flies to her mouth, her eyes widening in disbelief. Piers Morgan sits forward in his chair, completely transfixed. Simon Cowell's skeptical expression melts into something approaching awe, his mouth slightly open as he processes what he's hearing. As Paul builds toward the aria's famous climax, the emotions in the room become palpable. People in the audience have tears streaming down their faces. The orchestra swells behind him as he delivers the final victorious notes of Nessun Dorma, his voice ringing through the venue with triumph and passion. The moment the last note fades, pandemonium erupts. 2,000 people leap to their feet as one, the standing ovation thunderous and immediate. All three judges stand, applauding wildly. Amanda Holden has tears running down her cheeks. The ovation continues for what feels like minutes, the audience refusing to stop clapping, many wiping their eyes as they applaud this ordinary man who just delivered an extraordinary performance. Simon Cowell speaks first when the noise finally subsides, his voice filled with genuine emotion as he tells Paul that was a complete breath of fresh air, absolutely fantastic, and completely unexpected from someone who works at Carphone Warehouse. Piers Morgan praises the performance as stunning and moving. Amanda Holden, still visibly emotional, calls it incredible and tells Paul he has a beautiful voice. The judges unanimously send him through to the next round, their enthusiasm palpable and sincere. Within hours of the audition airing on television weeks later, the video begins spreading across the infant YouTube platform. Views climb into the thousands, then hundreds of thousands, then millions. People around the world watch this unassuming mobile phone salesman deliver an operatic performance that rivals professionals who've trained their entire lives. The comments flood in praising his voice, his humility, his proof that talent exists in the most unexpected places. But the journey was far from over. What Britain's Got Talent cameras didn't capture was the painful road that led Paul Potts to that audition. Born in Bristol in 1970, Paul discovered singing as a child in church choirs, finding solace in music that he couldn't find anywhere else. Throughout his school years, Paul endured relentless bullying that left deep scars on his confidence. The taunts, the physical abuse, the daily humiliation of being targeted by cruel classmates could have broken him completely. But he had his voice, and singing became his sanctuary, the one place where the bullies couldn't reach him. At 16, he heard La Boheme for the first time and fell deeply in love with opera, beginning a romance with the art form that would define his life. Paul pursued his passion despite coming from a working-class background where opera was considered elitist and inaccessible. His father drove buses. His mother worked as a supermarket cashier. There was no money for prestigious music schools or private lessons. Paul worked various jobs at Waitrose, Tesco, and Debenhams while pursuing a degree in humanities. In 1996, he was elected to Bristol City Council as a Liberal Democrat, becoming the youngest councillor and serving until 2003. All the while, he continued singing with amateur opera companies, performing leading roles in productions of Mozart's Don Giovanni, Verdi's Aida, and Puccini's Manon Lescaut. He was living his passion on the side, never imagining it could become his career. Then disaster struck. In 2003, Paul suffered a devastating bicycle accident that left him with a broken collarbone and severe whiplash. The injury was painful and debilitating, but worse was what followed. Medical bills piled up. Unable to work properly, Paul fell into severe financial difficulties. Debt mounted. The stress was crushing. To make matters worse, he had recently been diagnosed with an adrenal tumor during treatment for a burst appendix. Doctors urged him to stop performing and focus on his health. Paul sang his final amateur opera role in 2003, then fell silent. For 4 years, he didn't sing opera at all, focusing instead on simply surviving financially by working at Carphone Warehouse. The dream seemed dead, buried under debt and disappointment. But his wife Julie Ann believed in him. Friends encouraged him. When Britain's Got Talent announced auditions, they urged Paul to try. He almost didn't go. What chance did a 36-year-old mobile phone salesman have against younger, more polished performers? It was during the semi-final on June 14, 2007, that Paul Potts truly silenced whatever remaining doubts existed about his extraordinary talent. For his semi-final performance, he chose Controversies, known in English as Time to Say Goodbye, the romantic ballad made famous by Andrea Bocelli. This was a different challenge from Nessun Dorma, requiring tender emotion rather than triumphant power. Paul delivered a performance that showcased his versatility and emotional depth. His voice caressed the lyrics with genuine feeling, each phrase perfectly controlled yet brimming with passion. The audience swayed along, many singing quietly with tears in their eyes. When he finished, the standing ovation came immediately once again. The judges were effusive in their praise. Simon Cowell called it beautiful. Piers Morgan said Paul proved he wasn't a one-hit wonder. Amanda Holden predicted he would go all the way to the final. Then came the results. Of all the acts that performed in that semi-final, Paul Potts received the highest public vote, the most votes of anyone that night. The audience had spoken decisively. This was their champion. Social media platforms and internet forums erupted with discussions about Paul. On early YouTube, comments praised his humility and genuine talent. On talent show fan sites, people predicted his inevitable victory. The narrative was irresistible. An ordinary man with an extraordinary voice, living proof that dreams can come true no matter your background or circumstances. The final loomed on June 17, 2007. And Paul would face some formidable competition, including 6-year-old singing sensation Connie Talbot, who had her own viral moment and devoted fan base. For the Britain's Got Talent final, Paul returned to the area that started everything. He performed the full-length version of Nessun Dorma, every verse, every note, building to that iconic climax with even more confidence and power than his audition. The performance was flawless. His voice filled the theater with triumph and joy, each note perfectly placed, the emotion palpable and real. The audience gave him yet another standing ovation, the energy in the room electric with anticipation. All 3 judges stood immediately, their faces showing genuine admiration. Piers Morgan told Paul that after seeing all the incredible acts that night, he still believed Paul was the winner. Amanda Holden told her he'd be signing a record contract by Monday. Simon Cowell nodded in agreement, his expression saying he'd already made his decision. Then came the wait. 2 million votes were cast by the British public that night, a record-breaking number that demonstrated the show's cultural impact. When hosts Ant and Dec opened the envelope containing the results, the tension was unbearable. They announced Paul Potts as the winner of Britain's Got Talent Series 1, the very first champion of what would become one of the most successful talent shows in television history. Paul collapsed in shock, tears streaming down his face as confetti rained from the ceiling. His wife Julie Ann rushed to embrace him, both of them crying tears of pure joy and disbelief. A record-breaking 12 million viewers watched that moment live, making it one of the most-watched television events of the year. The mobile phone salesman from Wales had just won £100,000 in a performance slot at the Royal Variety performance in front of Queen Elizabeth II. The victory catapulted Paul into a life he could never have imagined. Simon Cowell immediately signed him to his Psycho music label and Arista Records. In July 2007, just weeks after his victory, Paul released his debut album One Chance, named for the feeling that this was his one shot at making his dream reality. The album was a phenomenon. It reached #1 in the United Kingdom and top charts in 13 countries worldwide. Eventually, it would sell over 4 million copies globally and earn multi-platinum certifications. In December 2007, Prime Minister Gordon Brown presented Paul with a platinum disc for selling over 2 million copies. That same month, Paul performed at the Royal Variety performance for Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, singing Nulla Fantasia and his signature Nessun Dorma. Standing on that stage in front of royalty, Paul must have thought about the bullied child who found solace in church choirs, the injured cyclist drowning in debt, the mobile phone salesman who almost didn't audition. His success continued building momentum. In the United States, he appeared on Oprah Winfrey's show twice, performed live on NBC's Today Show, and was profiled on National Public Radio. He brought Times Square in New York City to a standstill with a live performance that drew thousands. His audition video became one of the most-watched clips in YouTube history, eventually surpassing 199 million views as of January 2026, introducing opera to millions who had never considered it accessible or relevant to their lives. Paul released his second album, Passion, in 2009, which reached #5 in the UK charts. He toured the world relentlessly, performing in concert halls and arenas across 45 countries. Critics, who initially dismissed him as a novelty act, were forced to admit his voice had staying power and genuine quality. In 2013, Paul's incredible life story was adapted into a Hollywood film titled One Chance, starring James Corden as Paul and featuring Julie Walters and Colm Meaney as his parents. The biopic grossed over £7 million at the box office and introduced Paul's story to new generations. He released his third album, the greatest hits that same year, followed by more studio albums including On Stage in 2017 and Música Non Prohibida in 2022. He competed in America's Got Talent, The Champions in 2019, reaching the final 12 out of 50 acts from around the world, though he didn't make the top 5. He appeared on Germany's version of The Masked Singer in 2022, performing as the koala and finishing in 8th place. He competed on South Korea's King of Masked Singer and won an episode of their Immortal Songs competition in a duet performance. In January 2024, he performed the role of Faust in Ken Hill's Phantom of the Opera for 16 performances at the Orb Theater in Tokyo, Japan, fulfilling his dream of playing leading roles in full opera productions. As of 2025, Paul Potts has performed over 1,500 concerts across 45 countries, in 291 cities. In interviews celebrating the 18th anniversary of his BGT victory, the now 54-year-old singer reflects with pride on defying critics who said his voice wouldn't last a year. He performed 85 shows in 2024 and has 80 concerts scheduled for 2025. He tours extensively in Germany, where he's become particularly beloved, appearing regularly on German television and performing sold-out concerts throughout the country. His 2026 tour schedule includes performances across Germany and Denmark, with his Unforgettable Moments concert series bringing his music to theaters and churches. He remains based in Port Talbot, Wales, with his wife Julie Ann, staying grounded in the place where his journey began. He speaks candidly about still struggling sometimes with confidence, about feeling old when he realizes it's been 18 years since that life-changing audition, but also feeling special because maintaining a successful singing career for nearly 2 decades is rare for anyone, let alone someone who started at 36 with no formal professional training.